Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Today on the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with the Whole Being Institute, we're going to be talking about the power of positive psychology on addictive behaviors. Most people think of drugs and alcohol and gambling and even of sex when they think of addiction. However, we all have the ability to engage in addictive behavior and react to the underlying negative voices in our heads. So while engaging in any kind of addictive behavior, it can be easy to define ourselves by the worst things we've done. And it's almost seductive to tell ourselves how unworthy or defective we are because of all the people we have hurt, maybe even including ourselves. But the good news is that regardless of the nature of the experience with addiction, there is an ability to be able to conceptualize the relationship someone has with the behavior as a doorway to understanding the inherent goodness that lives within each of us. Our past behavior does not define us. We have the power to decide who we are and what will become of our lives, not in spite of what we've been through, but actually because of what we've been through. Today, we're going to learn about how positive psychology tools can be most effective in identifying these negative factors driving our addictive behavior and discover how to think and feel through a more intentional lens to develop sort of a new and positive personal storyline that we can forge for a more optimistic future. And to guide us in this discussion is Dr. Adam Schilling. He holds a doctoral degree in higher education and social change, a master's degree in marital and family therapy, and a bachelor's degree in psychology. He has also completed training and certification courses in both sex addiction, and positive psychology. And he began his path working for an addiction treatment center in 2011 and moved on to private practice in 2017. He has written a book. He's the author of Be Your Advocate, Learn to Accept the Experience of Addiction as a Path to Uncover Your Potential. And this is Balboa Press, 2003. And we're going to talk about his book and talk about the link between positive psychology and addiction today. I'm very excited to have you on the call, Dr. Schilling. May I call you Adam?
You certainly may.
And I wondered if we could start with just a moment of meditation, reflection to just get us in our bodies. If everyone could just take a moment to feel your feet and then sense where you're sitting and sit and know that you're sitting. And then take a moment to just put your hands on your heart, on your chest for a moment, and then breathe in, inhale, and maybe even reach your arms up to the sky, and then let your hands just pass down in front of you to kind of calm and center us. Thank you. Oh, that feels good. So, Adam, I was wondering if we could start with how did you get into positive psychology as a professional, as a therapist and stuff? Oftentimes that's not taught in kind of traditional MSW education. How did you encounter that and lead you to positive psychology?
Yeah, it was a new, thanks for asking that. That was a new discovery for me in the realm of mental and emotional health around 2016 or so. I entered into the field of mental and emotional work in a really unique setting. I was working in a sex addiction treatment center in an intensive outpatient program. And so the clients that we were seeing really had a high acuity of acting out behavior with sex and also substances. But by the nature of the program, one second. Because of the nature of the program, hang on one second, I'm trying to get back to seeing you. I have one request, if everybody could mute their cameras or their mics. And then if Caroline, if you can say something to bring the focus back to you.
Sure, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. There we go. So it was a unique situation that I was working in that I wasn't just seeing clients, for an hour a week or an hour every other week. This was an intense setting where I was seeing people for sometimes up to 20 hours a week. So they were really working hard through workbooks and various areas of self-discovery, and they were going to 12-step meetings, and they were going through coaching programs with me, and also therapy and group therapy and family therapy and working with their partners. And these people were working very, very hard. Now, the behaviors that they had done were incredibly destructive and chaotic, and had caused a ton of damage to their relationships and to themselves, and to their worlds, really. So they were coming out of the worst things that they have been through and had done. And so when they were going to meetings, 12-step meetings, and going to a lot of the group meetings that they were experiencing, a lot of the messaging that these people were receiving was that because you have an addiction, you're defective, you have character defects, and so there's always going to be something wrong with you. And I bought into that on some level too for the first few years of working with these clients, that, okay, this is a disease perhaps that you are going to be living with. You developed this over time because of things you've been through your childhood. Your brain has formed in a certain way to now function in a certain way, and we now call that a disease. And so here you go, here's your label, you're an addict forever, and here's what you need to do for the rest of your life in order to regulate yourself and not destroy your life for the rest of your life. And right around 4 to 5 years of working in this kind of context and interacting with these people, again, for long periods of time, I realized that messaging is extremely disempowering. And the people that I was interacting with were, yes, they had done awful things, but were wonderful, kind-hearted, beautiful, loving people who really wanted to do well. They did not want to keep doing these things that they had done. And so different ways of thinking about how to conceptualize why they had done what they had done. And also, even after spending 3 to 4 months in a program that was 10 to 20 hours sometimes a week, they were continuing to work with me or to other clinicians in our practice. So there was a desire to want to continue to be better. And so that desire right there of wanting to give back, of wanting to be better, of wanting to grow and evolve, and all that is positive psychology. So these people were embodying this essence that was not a disease model and not a defective model, but one of empowerment and beauty. And so my supervisor at the time, we were talking about these kinds of realizations, and he said, I think you need to go find some other kind of training to help you understand what's coming through at this point. And so I found the Whole Being Institute and went through the positive psychology certification program. And through that program is where the idea for this book was born. So side note, this is actually a full circle moment for me to come home and to speak with Whole Being Institute, because this is where so much of this information was initiated. So I'm incredibly grateful in this moment.
Well, we're incredibly grateful to you. This is a whole field of study that is being influenced by positive psychology via your work. And I just keep thinking of the ripple effect of looking at what's strong versus what's wrong in the addictive, mental health community. I think that's pretty miraculous. How has your book been received? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. Yeah. So far, so good. I mean, yeah, it came out last year, I think. Yeah, 2023. It's tough to get the messaging out there because ideas in the book are not typically what people are used to when they're learning about addiction, seemingly. So it's also tough to, when people don't know who I am, to try to get that message out there, like, hey, here's a whole bunch of stuff that can help you understand why you've been doing what you're doing differently. So there are actually three parts to the book. The first part is understanding what addiction is, where it comes from, and why we would do those things. And I can get to that in just a moment. The second part is BETTER, BETR, which is an acronym for behaviors, emotions, thoughts, and reality. So cognitive, a lot of cognitive work there. But I put my spin on there with all the experiences that I've had. And then the last part is how to know that all of this is working. So here are a bunch of tools to work on behaviors. Here are a bunch of tools to understand your emotions. Here are a bunch of tools to understand your thoughts, which is the GNAT. And here are a bunch of tools and information to understand how to sculpt a positive reality. Now, see, often what happens in mental and emotional health, when someone is moving through their program, it's hard to know when you're doing better, because oftentimes doing better means a lack of feeling bad. So, but that's often difficult to recognize. The last part of the book, it's a short part. This is what it looks like when things are just going okay, and you're interacting with this work in a competent way. So there's a ton of information in the book, and really my overarching goal of writing it was to provide everything that I've learned in 10 plus years of working in this environment, personally and professionally, spiritually. I wanted to give people who can't afford coaching or therapy, which is a luxury service. Here are all the tools that you can possibly learn that I can offer you, bundled up, packaged in a way that also speaks to the ability to understand addiction from a completely different standpoint, which is actually one of strength.
So let's dive into that a little bit more. What
Yeah.
is addiction in your model?
So we are bundles of energy moving through time. Okay, so we have the ability to remember. So these vessels that we're in have the ability to remember events, and those events they're not memories aren't captured somewhere specifically in the brain. They're they're areas of the brain where memories are stored, but there's not some ticker tape going across there that just captures everything we've been through. So, but however, energy gets stored in the body, and typically that energy, well, oftentimes that energy is stored negatively because our bodies want to not experience that thing that we experienced ever again. And so we take snapshots of things that we might call traumatic, and we hold that energy in our bodies. One way to look at that, or something that can happen with that, is that the voice in our head can take that experience or that energy.
I lost you there for a minute. Anybody
The
else?
reason I feel this way, I must not be good enough, or, which is super common, there must be something wrong with me. That energy is really difficult and uncomfortable to sit with and hold with through our lives. And so we will engage in behaviors to try to relieve that energy through reward seeking or some kind of relief seeking. That the compulsivity behind that pursuit is addictive energy. So addictive energy is trying to relieve that unresolved, unrealized, or unrecognized pain or discomfort that's trapped in the body that needs to be understood and released. So what that also means, though, and this is the really key part, is that if someone, or since someone is spending so much time trying to alleviate that stress and dysregulation internally, that must mean that there's another part of that person that cares deeply about wanting them to feel relief and to feel better. That is a goodness that is within that person that is underneath the addictive behavior. And so what I do in my work, and also what the book is designed to do, is to help teach people how to understand that that goodness is underneath the suffering. And if they can learn to be still and settle down the discomfort and the addictive behaviors, what will rise in most people, not everybody, but what will rise in the vast majority of people is a part of them that wants them to be well. Otherwise, they simply would not be doing so many compulsive things to try to regulate the discomfort. They just wouldn't do it.
So to recap, as a layperson, I'm not a doctor. Am I correct in understanding that we have these energies stored in our body from our experiences that is trapped inside, and that some of our behaviors are what we're trying to do is release that and regulate ourselves, either from not feeling that or releasing it or whatever. And that can lead us to seeking a drink or sugar or, a drug substance or, seeking pleasure, just to even almost regulate our system or feel what I would call normal. I've heard in a way that addiction it like hijacks the pleasure center. And it's not that people are trying to feel good necessarily, it's just they're trying to feel normal, right? They're just trying to regulate their system. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, well, and there's a spectrum too between a bad habit and addiction. So a bad habit could also be, engaging in something like a drink or a donut or something in order to regulate the self, because I'm having a bad day, so I'm going to have a donut. But with a bad habit, and with both, there's a knowingness there that this is not good for me, but I'm going to do it anyway. If someone came to you and said, you know what, this thing that you're doing here is causing me harm, this is really having it's causing a whole lot of consequences in your life. You're trying to stop the behavior, but it's not quite working. The behavior is becoming more secretive and shameful. Then we're starting to move on the spectrum from a bad habit, which is also about regulating the self, to an addiction, which is, I need to do this in order to feel okay. Because on some level, the GNAT, the voice in my head, is telling me that I'm not okay, i.e., there's something wrong with me. So that's a more intense and intentional engaging in a behavior that there's a knowingness there that this is not good for me. And sometimes I don't want to stop, because if I stop, all that pain and dysregulation starts coming to the surface. And so I have a story in my head that says, I can't handle that. I'm not strong enough to handle that pain, which is not true. So yeah, addiction is about looking at intensity and intention behind the regulation.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing. Can you talk a little bit about GNAT? And I think our listeners would be really interested in that acronym and how that is employed in your work.
Sure. So the GNAT, GNAT, stands for Grand Narrator Around Thought. It is the voice that is in your head. So I didn't know in my own personal work that up until about 2013, that the voice in my head was not me. I thought that was me. And through reading various books, The Untethered Soul was one of them that was mentioned in the description for the course. Various meditative activities, I realized that the voice was not me. And also working with clients, I was experimenting with them on their relationship to the voice that is in their head also. And so a conceptualization about the voice really started to concretize. So we have 5 external senses. We can see, we can taste, we can smell, we can hear, and we can touch, right? All of those are ways that we take in data from our external environment. But that data doesn't just enter our bodies and then go nowhere. We also have internal senses too. So 2 main internal senses that we have, which are also forms of energy in the body, are our emotions and our thoughts. Those are our internal senses that combine with our external senses, or they work with each other to form our reality. The GNAT is the voice in your head. It is your thought sense. It is designed to keep you, like all your other senses, it's difficult and complicated to wrap your brain around when it is so negative. But what it's doing is identifying by identifying threat in your environment, just like your 5 external senses do too. So it has a tendency to sound super negative. So it's just it frets. What's going to happen tomorrow? What did I do last week? Well, is what I'm wearing okay? Do I sound okay? La, 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 la. Because what it's doing is wanting to make sure that you are socially acceptable, part of a tribe, and not going to be left for dead and abandoned. And so it is constantly reading the room, as it were, and the room also being internally inside your body. It's reading your life, trying to identify threats in order to keep you safe. And that can be very scary and very depressing, actually, when someone doesn't realize that that's what it's doing. But when you are able to realize that that is what it is doing, that's what its job is to identify things that could go wrong. There's a two-step process to do, which I'm going to get to right now. But there's a way to interact with the GNAT differently, because it's not going anywhere. It's here to help. So the idea is to develop a different relationship to it. And everybody who learns this very easy two-step process experiences relief. Everybody does. So does that make sense so far?
Yes, sometimes you're going in and out a little bit. I don't know if it's your internet or ours, but that's why I want to recap. So the GNAT is the negative voice in our head, and it's going to be looking for snakes versus focusing on butterflies, right? And as a result, I love this idea of it being an internal sense, that our thoughts and our emotions are an internal sense that kind of communicate with the 5 senses outside. I haven't heard that before, and Adam, that's very, very unique, but it makes sense to me. And then that forms to create our reality. And we get into trouble because we know about the negativity bias of the brain. We get into trouble a bit because that voice is going to be amplified over time, especially if we're anxious, we have fear. It seems like there are conditions, uncertainty in the world, threats, perceived real and non-real, that we have seen, my gosh, since COVID and so many, the wars that we're experiencing around the world. There's a lot going on that I would think would amplify the GNAT. Did I capture it correctly?
Yeah. Well, all those things are potential threats, and that is the GNAT's job, is to focus on those things in order to keep the self safe.
I wanted to go back to what you were talking about. We've had a couple of positive psychology hours in which we were talking about like the inner critic, and also like learning about these voices in our head. And to go back to something that you said, which to me sounds like we have an inner essence. If we looked at our childhood baby picture, right, when we're born, we have this beautiful essence, this curiosity, this if everyone looked at their baby picture, there's no way that there isn't an essence of goodness and warmth. And I wonder if that's kind of what you're talking about. And then as we go through life and responding to our GNAT and maybe regulating through these behaviors, these addictive behaviors that hurt ourselves and others, we can start to identify that we are those behaviors versus the essence that we started with, that's in that baby picture, for example. Is that what you meant by we all are essentially innately good?
Yes, 100%. My niece was born 8 years ago, and I was in the room shortly after she was born. And when she came into the room, I had never experienced, up until that point in my life, the pure love that was in the room. Everyone in there was just silent, because it almost, well, first of all, there was no need to speak, because there was just this beautiful love. It was so simple and easy and kind, and it just permeated the room. That is what you're describing is in our baby pictures. We all came into this world from wherever we come from with that beautiful energy. And as we move through time, at some point, I've been experimenting with my niece. So around the age, and also when I taught kindergarten, I learned a lot about this, where I think the voice comes online. It's right around the age of 5, 4, 5, 6, 7. I taught a little class with 3 little kids last summer, 2 7-year-olds and 1 6-year-old, trying to see if that voice was in there. And the 7-year-olds could wrap their heads around it. The 6-year-old, she had a little bit of a tougher time, but it was there. So this is a work in progress of understanding when the voice comes online. But when it does, when the GNAT comes online, see, the GNAT is not just focused on the negatives or the positives. The GNAT focuses on assumptions. So because something happened, it works on if-then statements. So if I was treated like this, then I must be this. And that could go positively or negatively. If I was to be a good person, no, that's an assumption. If I was bullied, if I was abused, then I must be broken and defective. Nope, that's all assumptions. So
I wonder if we could play a little bit and
sure.
go to our Zoom Unity and play with some GNAT statements and fill them in, and then play with some ways to work with them. Would that
Sure.
be okay?
I love that. And we'll get into the 2-step process too.
Awesome. So how would you like to do that? Or do you want to do the 2-step process first?
Sure. So it's quite simple. So first step, regardless of, so we're operating under our own assumption here that the voice is here to protect and to keep us safe. So that needs to be on board in order to do the 2-step process. As negative as it may sound, I mean, it may say you are a horrible person, you do not deserve to be here, you don't deserve love, happiness, success, wealth, all of that. It may be just screaming that. All that's doing is keeping someone small, stuck, and afraid. Because its assumption is, if you stay small, stuck, and afraid, then you won't take the risks to be great. You won't put yourself out there. You won't be vulnerable. Because if you do those things, you might get hurt again. And I'm trying to protect you. So that is the operating paradigm here. So step 1 is to thank it.
Before we go to step 1, we've had a question in the chat to redefine the acronym. So G stands for, I'll write it in the chat if you tell me again.
Sure, I can write it too.
Okay. Well, or you can talk as you go. So G stands for grand, narrator, great, around, thought. Fantastic. And so step 1 is thank the voice.
Thank you. Yep. You want to thank that thing. So by thanking it, what you're doing, so we are, as we experience reality, we are doers. We are the ones doing the things. We're the ones doing the talking and the thinking and the feeling and all that. And then we also have the ability to observe these other aspects of us. So when you thank it, you activate that process of depersonalizing from it, because you're actually bringing on like a grander GNAT, I guess is the way to think of it. So the overseer GNAT. So thank you for whatever it is that you're trying to say to me right now. Thank you for wanting me to be safe. Thank you for wanting me to not want to risk being hurt again or abused or being vulnerable and abandoned. That's a big one. I don't want to go on dates, or I don't want to put myself out there in relationships because I don't want to be abandoned again, which is an assumption. So thank you for wanting me to be safe. Something you can do there too is to get in front of a mirror, look yourself just dead in the eyes and tell it, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then step 2 is to reassure it. because all it's doing is wanting you to be safe. So thank you for not wanting me to be hurt again, abandoned again. But regardless of the next steps that are needed, I'm going to figure them out. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to read books. I'm going to learn to meditate. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to get sun on my face. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to just be still. I'm going to figure this out. I am figuring this out. But thank you for thank you for caring so much. I got this. So it's step one, thank it. Step two, reassure it. And do that as much as it takes. That will help. And we can practice that.
Awesome. It also reminds me of Daniel Siegel's work, Name It to Tame It.
That also is about depersonalizing from it. Yeah.
Right. And just for our listeners, that is a work where, like, if you're feeling an emotion, you say not I am angry, but I notice I'm feeling angry.
Yeah.
Right. And then that helps to separate from identifying with it, which is what I hear you saying, is that what we're going to do in this process, and I can use myself as an example, and then, or we can just jump in. What do you guys want to do? Raise your hand if you just want to jump in and try it in the chat. Rachel and Susan and Nancy, you guys, and Janice, everybody, you guys game for this? So what I am doing is I'm thinking of a negative voice that I might have, right? Something that I'm thinking negatively. Well, I'll go. I wanted to, today I'm working on eating more. So I'm not skipping meals because I tend to work and then skip meals. So I could berate myself. The voice in my head says, Caroline, if you don't eat, you're going to, you're going to get fat. And you're going to be irritable with people, and you should know how to do this already. You're a health and wellness professional. Is that my NAT?
100. Well, what do you think?
Yes, there's an assumption. I should know how to do this. If I do this, if I don't eat, then this is what's going to happen, right? If I don't eat and regulate, and then I'm not going to be healthy and well, and I'm going to get sick. So you said it's an assumption. So, and it's also an if and then.
Yeah, because
Okay.
those things that you're speaking to, which are super common, are not happening in this present moment. So you haven't, there's no weight gain. You haven't been imperfect at this point. You haven't, all the things that it fears are going to happen aren't happening right now. So that is it peering into the future, wanting your future to look a certain way. So thank it.
So thank you for attempting to help me regulate and stay safe, right? And stay healthy and well. You're essentially giving me a little warning sign to pay attention. So thank you for doing that.
And so now it needs reassurance because its job is to take care of you. So
Right.
what are you going to do in order to meet its need to keep you safe?
Right. So I just want to reassure you that I'm on it. I'm going to, every time I do something well, which is eat regularly, I'm going to celebrate that and have a wonderful cup of tea. So I'm on it. I'm listening. I'm paying attention, and I just want you to know that I appreciate you, giving me the heads up that I need to pay attention to this.
So does that feel any differently?
Yeah. Helene says, please schedule lunch. Yes, that's a good idea, Helene. I can reassure that I'll do that. I'll put it in lunch in my calendar. I love that I'm getting from the Zoom Unity ideas to help me. But you know what I love about this too is that I've heard that it's really difficult to feel fear when I'm in gratitude. So if I'm grateful, if I'm in fear, which is what my NAT is activating, right? And we're looking at that part of the brain, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn part of the brain. It's activating that. I'm really looking at wanting to go into my empathy circuitry, to my creativity, into my right brain to activate that kind of that center. So to do that with gratitude, like, I'm going back and forth. The corpus callosum is going crazy. It's like, yeah, let me be in gratitude right now. And it's helping regulate that part of my brain and get me into that executive functioning. True?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know that to be true by the resulting emotions from that, which are going to feel something, yeah, in the realm of gratitude, in the form of relief, because the gnat loves to make plans. So when you thank it, get into a sense of gratitude for it, whatever it even is, by the way. I mean, that's still a mystery. It is a sense, but it's coming from somewhere. When you get into the driver's seat of it, a natural sense of well-being will come forth because that is what its purpose is. So there's a lot of self-regulation that comes on board. Everything you just described, I agree with everything you just said. And yeah, there's a natural state of regulation that comes online, which is its whole purpose.
Yeah. And what I'm wondering is self-regulation in the VIA strength assessment is like one of the lowest things worldwide. So what you're talking about, in essence, is a two-step process to help us with self-regulation. Sandra had a great question. She said, a young man, 28 years old, keeps referring back to being bullied when he was in junior high. He says his nose is too big and he was teased. These thoughts keep resurfacing. He is a handsome, fit person, spends 2 to 3 hours in the gym daily, and has a 10-year history of substance abuse. Is he listening to his gnat?
He's consumed by his gnat.
Oh.
So what he's probably doing is running on an assumption that he's defective and weak somehow because he was bullied, which is a common assumption. Also, probably too, there's something wrong with
He has
me,
experienced some trauma.
otherwise that
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened to me. All those fun, yeah, well, all those are elements of trauma, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the assumption is I've got to make my body look a certain way. This is all my assumptions, working with this kind of client many times. I have to make my body look a certain way in order to not have that thing ever happen to me ever again.
Yeah.
So that would be a compulsive addiction probably to the gym,
Mm-hmm.
which is not negating physical well-being and working out, but
Right.
yeah, that compulsivity is much different.
And Helene says, I know a gentleman who constantly compares himself to the successful people in his family. He resorts to gambling addiction.
Yeah. So if I win that big amount, all right, and get to feel like a hot shot, then I get to feel better than. And if I get to feel better than, then I don't have to feel the less than-ness that is probably going on there from the gnat and from those stored emotions, probably coming from somewhere in childhood.
What I also hear you saying, Adam, is that, it's not easy being human, right? And we go through life and we get exposed to these different things from the outside senses, and how we interpret them is can really greatly impact our trajectory towards becoming an adult. And the compassion that you have for people that are addictive or using addictive substances is that, oh my gosh, let's help you recognize that there's another way to manage your feelings, your thoughts, and help you regulate. Right? Is that?
Yeah, and you wouldn't be doing these things if a part of you didn't want you to never experience those hurts again, and didn't want you to feel better. That means there's a part of you that loves you deeply. If and
Oh, we just lost you there for a minute. Can you repeat that?
So yeah, it's about coming home to one more time.
I said we just lost you for, I don't know if your internet's a little bit goes in and out, but you said there's a part of you that really wants to live and to experience these good things and not feel this pain. So is some of it like, okay, let's teach you how to feel pain. Let's teach you how to be okay with the human experience. Tal Ben-Shahar says we have one place, right, to feel emotions, both happy and good. And if we're not able to feel them, and if we bring in positive psychology, these little micro practices that we have can help us temper the negative emotions, which are like a wave, right? We know that 90 seconds we can experience an emotion, any emotion. It's just 90 seconds, and we can actually count it and let it feel energy wise and ride it. But not everybody gets that information, right?
Well, and what the GNAT will do is take that propensity to experience emotions for 90 seconds and keep it going for minutes and hours and decades and lifetimes. So yes, emotions are intended or can be experienced in about a 90-second time frame. But when the GNAT gets involved and starts spitting out assumptions about why we feel that, that's when those emotions can become worldviews and really be destructive.
Mm-hmm. So for those on the call, we had a great question, which is, so if I were starting from scratch and wanted to build a healthy individual, where would I start?
Say that one more time.
If I was starting from scratch and wanted to build a healthy individual, where would I start?
It's a big question.
Well, you're doing
It
it with
would
your
depend.
niece, right?
I'm experimenting with her, yes. um, it would be as soon as possible, and I actually do have a big dream about this, to teach people as early as possible, ideally in kindergarten, that there is a voice in their head and that voice is not them. That would be a revolutionary shift in our education system and just a global consciousness as a whole. So, and really teaching young kids how to interact with the voice and to look at the assumptions that get created by the voice, and that those assumptions are not them either. So that would be a big, broad starting spot. And then in addition to that, also strong emotion awareness training for kids. I mean, yes, we teach kids how to spell, we teach kids how to add, but do we teach kids what their bodies are feeling? No, we don't. And so we've got all these kids, and now us grown-up kids who are running around with all these emotional experiences that a lot of us don't even have names for. So we don't know when we're feeling anxiety or anger or joy. We don't even know how to identify them. So teaching, building a healthy human, I suppose, would be to teach them how to identify that they are not their thoughts, well, and that their thoughts are not out there to get them. And no matter and what their emotions are, and no matter what they go through in their life, that whatever that is, that does not define them positively or negatively. That's just, it's not who you are.
Beautiful. And then we have some other suggestions in your books and tools. So can you give us an example of some of those tools to know, sort of regulate, and then also to know that it's working?
So yeah, let's see.
Because we talked about the GNAT, which is assumptions, and if this, then that. And then the middle part of the book is, remind me?
So the acronym BETTER,
Better. So that, let's do
behaviors,
something with
emotions.
that.
Well, something that the NAT does is take life disproportionately. So, and what that sounds like is having real big emotions for things that, and real big thoughts about things that aren't that serious. I am not invalidating traumatic experiences, not at all. But the vast majority of things that people go through are not trauma related. The vast majority of things that people actually go through, even though trauma is real and a thing, are perhaps experienced seriously, but they're simply making them proportionate.
Okay.
I
I
do
just lost you for a second. Did you say the vast majority of experiences that people go through are not huge and traumatic, but we kind of blow them out of proportion?
Yes,
I can think of like the first time when I was 15 or no, 17, I think, and my boyfriend broke up with me, I thought the world was going to end. Is
right,
that a good example of what you're talking about?
100%.
Yeah. And it was the first time that had happened to me. And the pain that I experienced was colossal. Anybody else? Right? The first time, remember those days? And I think sometimes that back to that time of our life, when we're experiencing and learning about emotions and learning about having things for the first time, and our hormones are going crazy, and we're experiencing that for the first time. But that can continue, and it also can be habitual. And we can understandably want to dampen that and not feel that again. But as we said, we have one channel to feel everything. So knowing how to regulate is super important. So what's the better? What would I do in that situation?
So, and I apologize for my internet connection, just FYI. So behaviors, emotions, thoughts, and reality.
Mhm.
So are my behaviors aligned with my values? Do I even know what my values are? Do I know that I practice kindness and compassion? And do we even know what those things feel like when I'm aligned with those values? Do I know what my emotions, like I was saying before, do I even know what they are? And do I have a disproportionate relationship to them? Meaning, do I take them too seriously? Am I over-identified with them? Because fear can become panic real quickly. Fear can become depression real quickly if we overemphasize that feeling and over-personalize with it.
Mhm.
So do I have a proportionate and moderate relationship to my emotions? Thoughts, so the T in better thoughts goes back to the relationship with the voice to the gnat. That chapter is all about the gnat. Am I able to depersonalize from the gnat? Am I able to see that it is a sense that is designed to help me? Am I practicing not taking it so seriously? Because it, as we all know, can be very serious. And then reality, am I taking necessary steps to offer an open-hearted, kind approach to life in general? And can I just take things one day
I think
step at a time? And
one
again,
day
like
at a
these other
time.
steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost you there for a minute. I think you're saying take things one step at a time, one day at a time.
And
Yeah.
not so seriously. Yeah.
I have another example. I learned 20 years later that my father at my wedding thought it was at the rehearsal, not the rehearsal dinner, you know, what did the guys do? We played laser tag. Anyway, that was their bachelor party. He felt like the whoever was supposed to pay for that didn't step up
Bachelor
to pay
party?
for it. Yes, the bachelor party. I think the best man's supposed to, whatever the tradition is, I'm not sure. But he told me 20 years later that he paid for some of it, but he thought he should have stepped up and done all of it. And his brother paid for it, and he felt bad. 20 years later, he had held that and never told me. That is a gnat, right? And anybody else, we hold on to these things, and that's not necessarily a big thing. It could be, I was thinking about you, Anita, these small things. I said, oh, Daddy, my God, it's okay. It's all right. And it released him. Right. So we have these things, as you said, stored energy inside. Okay, so now we were basically asking ourselves, is this real? And using self-compassion and activating again the empathy circuit so that we, like Helene, I'm so sorry. She said she got dressed up and her date never showed up. Oh, I'm so sorry. How disappointing. How we have these things. And yet what I love about Kristen Neff's work and self-compassion is that she says to us, I'm not alone. Right? Suffering is part of life. Other people suffer too. And that feels to me like that's what you're talking about in the better as well.
Mhm.
holding myself, doing all the things where we hold or we do touch, where we breathe, but that whole self-compassion sense too. And humor, my gosh, one of the things that I like, if we could sit around like, Helene was talking about her situation. I was talking about my situation. If we both talked about a little bit longer about what we did at that time at 15 and what we thought, we'd probably start laughing and giggling because we made it through, right?
Right.
And then to wrap it up, what's the how do I know that it's working? That I am starting to self-regulate, that I'm kind of, it almost feels like Star Wars to me, Adam, in the head. Like you're describing, like, you've got your inner Darth Vader that's like, telling you all these things. And then there's the other part is feel the force, Luke, go to that good part of yourself. And right. So how do I know who's winning? Oh, did I lose
Well,
him?
you're gonna know who's winning by how you're feeling.
Ah,
Am I back? Yeah.
yes, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, you're gonna know who's winning by how you're feeling. But that doesn't mean that if you're feeling poorly, that you're losing. It just means you've got a gnat that's stuck on a negative station. So, because a lot of times people can get real down on themselves. Well, I just can't get out of this rut. So there must be something wrong with me. I can't do it right. No, 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 no. That's just the gnat just regurgitating its own garbage. So you're going to know that things are moving in a positive direction if you're able to just be more still. If you're able to just
Mm.
be, yeah, a little slower, more still, and just be more present with these forces and energies that are going on inside of you, that the process of witnessing those, that's all that energy is needing anyway, is to be seen, to be validated, and to be released. So it's just screaming in there to be released and to be witnessed. So the more you're able to do that and to not engage in things like addictions to regulate those energies, that is the process of moving forward. It is an imperfect process as nature goes. That's how nature is designed, but it is a process that we continue can
It sounds to me,
whole
Adam, we
life.
lost you. We
So
lost you.
it's not like there's an end and then you just feel, sorry.
That's okay. It sounds to me we lost you a little bit, but I keep getting this impression of how important your work is. This ability for us to listen to one another, to bear witness for one another, for those pains and those hurts and those, so that they're released, right? And I was thinking of, sort of be calm and carry on, that stiff upper lip. It's actually not that. It's being able to share with somebody, hey, this happened to me and I'm feeling bad about it, or I'm feeling sad about it, or I'm feeling anxious about it, or I think this defines me. It almost feels like we can use our negative emotions and our negative thoughts to give us a clue that, wait a second, our hand's on the hot stove. Maybe we should pay attention and activate better.
Yes, that's a beautiful statement. So because I'm having these negative assumptions about myself, that must mean that I want to have been included, gone on that date, not been bullied, i.e. been in a state of connection and be safe, which means that, yeah, these negative thoughts and feelings are a roadmap back to the goodness that is inside of us.
That's awesome. So to bring it full circle with positive psychology, there's so many micro practices that we can choose. And we know from Sonia Lyubomirsky's work, I don't think I said her name right. I always have trouble with that. Lyubomirsky, sorry, Sonia. Anyway, that we have to pick the practices that work for us. For example, I think she says that gratitude is not one that she does, like writing down her gratitude. That's never worked for her. It's kind of irritating to her. So she does a different one, which when you were describing your niece being born, that to me sounds like awe, right? Like it just sounds like a moment of awe, right? And you can bring that back. So when we're experiencing these negative rushes of emotions or thoughts, we can say, wait a second, This does not define me. And what is a positive memory that I have of awe, or what is something that I'm grateful for? What was one thing that went well today, even though, so we're training ourselves to look for the good, right?
Well, absolutely. And by, yeah, identifying behaviors that are aligned with my values and identifying positive emotions and positive thoughts, that's all strength spotting, because you're you're doing that to yourself.
Beautiful. What do we have any other questions? Let's see. We have some things that Helene says, a man reached out to me recently apologizing for something he did that I never even remembered after 30 years. I'm so glad he feels better now. Yeah, we hold on to these things, right? And Valerie said, sorry, glad there are folks who have had easier lives. However, there are unlucky people who have clearly had extremely unfortunate events. I spent the first months in an impoverished foreign orphanage. I was adopted and ultimately successfully in New York, but after much therapy and after meeting my biofamily, still hard to get over this without crutches. Of course. Of course. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you for saying that. Adam, you're not negating trauma at all, or you're saying we need to recognize it. We need to give it space to be held, right? And that we're still impacted by it. It still leaves its mark, but it doesn't have to define us and or the future.
Right. And all of those experiences that I'm not sure who shared that. Thank you for sharing that. All of those experiences are real and painful. In large part is resulting assumptions about those experiences that are causing feelings at this point. So as the practice goes of really looking at what the assumptions are, which is the NAT, and thanking those assumptions for still trying to keep me safe now. Like, for example, I was abandoned and I'm not good enough or whatever. The abandoned part is what happened. That's the trauma. The I'm not good enough part, that's the assumption. That's not true. That thing, whatever that thing is, can have happened and did happen, but the assumption, the thought assumption about it, that's what can be. So thank you, Nat, for wanting me to have been cared for in a different way. That's my job now. That can feel very empowering. And that's also how to use something that can be very painful and very negative to become a tremendous source of light. I didn't get those things when I was growing up. That's my job now. And I dedicated to treating myself in ways that I was not treated in the past. And I'm going to get real busy.
Yes, we lost you a little bit there, but I'm also thinking about Viktor Frankl, right?
Yeah.
And in between stimulus and response, there was a pause. And in that pause, I have a choice. And it seems to me that your book and your work are so well needed, because if we can just pause, right? If we can just pause and make a choice for ourselves and one another and for our world that is reflective of our values and where we want to go, and does not mean that we're defined by what we've done or experienced in the past.
No.
Wow, what an interesting conversation. We have not had this kind of conversation before in relationship to addiction. So it's complex, wouldn't you say, everyone? It's not easy, right? And it feels like it touches on the shame cycle and the critical cycle and leashing that. Rachel, you had a question. Your hand is up. Did you want to unmute? Oh, and we want to know the name of the book that you wrote, Adam. And
Sure,
we
I'll
can
put
put
it in
that
the
in the chat and where people can get that. And go ahead, Rachel.
Yes, this sounds very interesting to me. I definitely am going to order your book today. However, and that comes to however, as someone who worked a lot with addictions, with a very vast experience educationally and professionally in psychology, and with having had addicts in my family, I don't think that this book and your method is suitable for everybody. It's not one size fits all. And what I learned many years ago when I started in the field of addictions was that a lot of addiction is just a symptom of an underlying psychiatric condition, which someone with a title as a coach and this and that is not qualified to treat. A lot of bipolar people, for instance, are addicts, and they not only that, they have a few addictions.
Mhm.
There's also a concept like dual diagnosis. Yeah, I am an addict, but I'm also bipolar or schizophrenic or something else, or borderline personality disorder and all that. So to go and simplify it into such like a rational emotive therapy, like cognitive approach to addiction is superficial and not, and I think that if someone that requires real professional treatment from a psychiatrist and a psychologist who are licensed to do this work, someone who would come to you could be misled, and for me, I want to read the positive psychology, and I think that positive psychology in general is good for people who are so to speak normal, and to raise our mood a little bit, but I don't see it as a really useful tool for most addicts that I have known. And I have known people who, and I have treated people who were drug addicts, alcoholics, compulsive gamblers, compulsive overeaters, went to Overeaters Anonymous. And I think I will definitely buy your book and I will study it, but I think that your book could be very dangerous for a lot of people.
Well, I want to
Now,
just say,
you'll throw me out of your
no,
group.
not at all, Rachel. I
Yeah.
think I want Adam to answer, but I also want to thank you for your point of view, because what I find is oftentimes the people that are the most, what do I want to, when you say you're not sure if you believe something, are the ones that are asking the questions that other people may want to be asking as well. And Adam, I know that this is why this work is so important, because it is an emerging field, right? And we're trying to answer that question, Rachel, which is, can this work have impact with people that have extreme addictive behaviors and tendencies? And not with everybody, but we're saying with that. And it's an emerging science. And Adam, I'd love for you to answer that as well.
Yeah, I agree with what Rachel's saying. With a co-occurring psychiatric issue, yes, that also needs to be addressed. However, if someone is able to, even regardless of what their neurochemistry looks like or physiology looks like, they can still learn these kinds of tools to shape their reality in different ways. And I would also think Rachel's GNAT.
I don't hear you.
Yeah, just give him 1 second. His internet went out.
Clients and people that she works with to in a, do you think that, what's that?
We just did, we said we left you. I would also like to thank Rachel's GNAT, and then your internet went out. I think clearly Rachel and Adam, as professionals, need to have a wonderful conversation. And I'm curious as to what it's going to be, but I think we might have lost Adam. Adam, are you still there? But I guess what it sounds to me like, Rachel, that he's very open to what you're saying. And he says that, of course, when there is a diagnosis, a dual diagnosis that needs to be addressed, and by an absolute professional like yourself, and also he is a professional as well. And I thank you very much for bringing this up, because this is exactly what we want to do on the Positive Psychology Hour. We want to be on the cutting edge. Dan Tomasulo, I know he is, we've had him on the call several times, and he said, he was using every in the book to cure his depression, and it was positive psychology and these little practices that helped him cure this major depression. So the impact of this is not just for the everyday person. And Adam, you are back. Do you want to just address that? We lost you with, I'd like to thank Rachel's GNAT.
Yes, I wanted to thank Rachel's GNAT, and I also apologize. So my NAT right now is talking about my internet connection and how it's letting everybody down. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to thank Rachel's NAT for also, because what I hear there is a concern that this kind of messaging doesn't mislead people. And so thank you. I agree. I don't want to mislead people either. But I also think that even though someone is experiencing co-occurring psychiatric issues, that these kinds of practices can help. But I absolutely validate what she's saying.
Yeah,
And
okay. A lot of addicts don't even
Wait.
know
I just want to be sorry to interrupt
yeah.
you guys. I might have you two connect, because we're at the top of the hour. We're actually over, and I want to be sensitive to everyone. And I think this is a fascinating conversation, and an important one. I don't want to negate that. And Barbara, I know that your hand is up too, and I had somebody else who wanted to talk. Go ahead. And we'll just have time for that. And then Rachel, or Adam, if you have one thing, and if you guys want to connect, I'm happy to do that. Rachel, do you want to put your information in the chat? You can put it directly to Adam, or Adam, how do we reach you? And Barbara, did you want to unmute and say something?
Yes, I want to thank you always for those wonderful speakers you bring. I want to thank Adam. I've been in classes recently where they're talking about the inner critic voice. And the classes I was in has nothing to do with, your organization, where the lecturer would say to talk back to the inner critic. I don't believe you. I don't want to listen to this. You're not telling me the truth. Stop it. That was not helpful at all. What Adam was saying was extraordinarily helpful, where you're thanking for the warning and something about, being honored, that you want to help me and protect me and I wrote it down, give gratitude to the inner critic voice and thank it for trying to help regulate me. Now, that is extraordinarily positive and helpful.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Great.
yeah.
So Adam, to finish and close, thank you for your work. Rachel, thank you for your comments, and Barbara and Helene and everybody in the chat. It is, we are going to be finishing for the summer. We'll come back in September, but there is a special offer. We have a presenter. His name is, hang on one second, who's going to be coming back to us. He's going to be just talking about positive psychology, the new science of happiness. It's again from 12 to 1 on Tuesdays, July 9 through July 23. I'll tell you a little bit about him. Rabbi Alfredo Borowitz. He was ordained in the seminario in Latin America in Buenos Aires. He's also received a law degree from the University of Buenos Aires and an MA in rabbinical literature and a doctorate in Jewish philosophy from the Jewish Theological Seminary. He's a graduate of the Social Work School of Adelphi University and has a certificate in executive coaching. He's going to be talking about positive psychology studies, the optimal functioning of the individual, and what to do about that. And that will be, there's a small fee if you want to do that, or you can just pay what you wish. But that's a course that we're offering, and I wanted to let everybody know about that. But Adam, just thank you so much for joining us and for coming on to the show tonight.
And it is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you. And I wish everyone, wherever you're at, a wonderful day. I feel so much love in my heart right now, and I share it with each of you. And I hope that we can all spread that throughout our days moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, let's all be advocates for that. All right, everyone.
Yes.
We'll see you in September, if not on the positive psychology program that is going to be happening starting next week. Take care.